So oh my goodness, I can't speak. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Lipstick and Lore. Roll the intro. Today I'm going to be your host in the spooky, strange, unsolved, conspiratorial, and historical cases that plague my mind and now have to plague yours. Today's case is that of the Chicago Tylenol murders, which, if you couldn't guess, are murders that happened in Chicago during the 80s and involved the pharmaceutical drug Tylenol. And basically, it's a long, huge, multiple victim case that I definitely went around in a rabbit hole for. So I'm pretty excited for this video. I'm not excited, but interested in this video, and I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as I enjoyed making it. Sorry for my absence. My birthday was on Thursday, which was the 2nd of July, and then 4th of July happened literally yesterday when I'm filming this and hopefully uploading it. So I've been a little bit busy, but I am back, and I should be back to my regular uploading schedule, and I tried to post in the community tab if I am going to miss a video. So check there if I'm not here on a Sunday or a Wednesday. That's probably where I will have posted why I'm gone. But without further ado, let's dive feet first into this case. Welcoming back, non-voiceover me, because this isn't a voiceover. I am going to try something new today, where I film the video while actually speaking to you, and not doing the voiceover. Because voiceover, fun fact about my filming process, voiceovers are what take me the most amount of time, and I find that to be insane. So I'm going to try to do it without a voiceover, and if it works, you'll be seeing this video, and if it doesn't, you will never know this happened, and that's crazy. So without further ado, let's get it right into today's case. So today's case is that of the Chicago Tylenol murders, which are a series of poisonings that happen due to drug tampering, which basically means that someone tampered with the drugs. And I don't mean like street drugs, I mean like over-the-counter pain reliever drugs. And the specific drug is Tylenol. And if you don't know what Tylenol is, which some people don't, especially, I don't know if they have like, I don't know if Tylenol is a super big drug in other countries or if that's just like an American thing. But Tylenol is acetaminophen, which is a base level pain reliever. So you don't need a prescription for it. You can get it at pretty much any pharmacy. So CVS, Walgreens. I think you can get it at the dollar store. And you don't need a prescription. And the generic name for acetaminophen is paracetamol. It's the same thing. One of them is just name brand, one of them is just generic. And I learned how to say both of these from another YouTuber here on YouTube, and her name is Southern Sounds ASMR. And you should go check out her channel because she does organization videos and ASMR, and she is so good at it. And let me tell you, that one puts me to sleep like that. It's actually quite crazy. So during the 80s, someone went through and tampered a bunch of bottles of this over-the-counter pain reliever, Tylenol, and they put in potassium cyanide, which, if you don't know what potassium cyanide is, I don't know. I can give you the basic for dummies description of it. I can't give you like the super scientific version of it, but basically it is a poison, and it is not fast acting, but it's also not super slow acting, and it is deadly in pretty much all the cases that I have seen with it. It does in fact cause. And this was specifically happening to bottles of extra strength Tylenol, and it was the capsule kind, so the kind that has the little capsules and they have powder in them. And how the tamperer was doing this was basically by swapping out the powdered Tylenol in the capsules for potassium cyanide, which, if consumed, you wouldn't expect your over-the-counter Tylenol to have literal poison in it. So you take it and you wouldn't think anything of it, and then it would dissolve in their system and eventually kill them. And our first victim of this is on September 28th, 1982. And if you wonder why I'm looking down there, my notes are down there, so I want to make sure I get things completely right. Listen, I'm very new at this, and I am by no means an expert, so I'm doing my best. But our first victim, which happened on September 28th, 1982, is 12-year-old Mary Kellerman, and she was hospitalized because she didn't feel well and was vomiting, and this was directly after consuming a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol, which she had taken because I believe she had a headache, and so her guardian or whatever gave her a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol that they had just bought at the store. And unfortunately, she was pronounced dead the next day after being rushed to the emergency room. There was really nothing that they could do to help her, and this unfortunately led to her death, which is so sad because she was only 12 years old. And also, it wasn't like someone was there and attacked her. It was she took medicine and then ended up dying from it, which is absolutely insane in my opinion. Then, following this, on September 26, 6 other individuals unfortunately consumed the contaminated capsules, which did lead to all of their unfortunate demises. And these people were Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Mary Rayner. So Adam was 27 years old. Stanley was 25 years old. Teresa was 19. Mary was 31. Paula was 35. And Mary was 27. And all of these individuals would ultimately succumb to the poisoning and would pass away due to this. All of them took one capsule of extra strength Tylenol, and all of them died within 24 hours of taking the capsule, which is why I say that potassium cyanide isn't necessarily fast acting, but it's not instantaneous, but it's also not slow acting. It's sort of in between, I would say. And this led to a full-scale investigation because people here in Chicago at the time are dropping like flies for seemingly no reason. Like, obviously hindsight is 2020 and we know why they were dropping like flies, but at this point they had no idea that the drugs were contaminated, which means they had zero idea why these people were dying, which is even more scary. Also, side note that I just want to put out there, there's nothing to do with the case, I just feel the need to tell you guys. I had someone comment on one of my videos the other day saying that they don't like that I draw my eyebrows on and that they think they're uneven and that I should stop doing that. So I replied to the comment because I'm petty and I said, I know they're uneven. I drew them that way. And then they just deleted their comment. So I don't really know what that says about me as a person, but I wasn't even trying to be mean. I just was saying I know they're uneven. Because typically they are. But anyway, back to the case, as I was saying. This led to a full-scale investigation by nurse Helen Jensen, which I love that name. That's iconic, I fear. And she was from the, Arlington Heights Official Public Health Office. And she was asked to investigate these deaths by the Janus family because they thought it was pretty suspicious that 3 of their completely healthy family members, ranging in ages, just dropped dead. Which, you know what? I would probably have some concerns about that too. So they called up the official health organization place in Arlington Heights and said, "Hey girl, we need you to investigate this ASAP." So, of course, she did, because that's suspicious, and who wouldn't? And she ended up going to the house and finding the bottle of Tylenol, which is fine. You know, at most houses, I've got Tylenol in my house. Most families do. But she also found the receipt for it. And she also had learned that all of the family members had taken some of this Tylenol. So the red flags, needless to say, they're raising. Okay, they're raising. Alarm bells are going off. She's clocking it. So immediately our girl, Helen over here, she takes this information to investigator Nick Pichos. I thought it was Pistachio at first, and I was like, that's not right. No one's last name is Pistachio. Unless your last name is Pistachio. Then comment down below and let me know, because I think that's also iconic. But she informed him of her suspicion that the deaths were in fact linked to the Tylenol. And he took her seriously, which I was pretty surprised about, because oftentimes in these cases, that investigators seem to like twiddle their thumbs and not take anyone seriously, which really annoys me. I don't even know how crimes got solved back then, because like there's no DNA testing, and also nobody seemed to be doing their jobs. So I don't even know how anything got solved back then. I think it was like luck of the draw, really. I also don't even know how criminals were getting caught. Like, how are you getting caught? Nowadays, I get it. We've got cameras everywhere. You know, you're being watched constantly. Well, depending on where in the world you are, but you're being watched constantly. But back then, I have no clue how people caught the criminals. Okay, truly, I don't. I think it's pure luck of the draw, which could be true. Could be true. But anyway, Nick's our guy. Okay, he's our investigator. So Nick, taking Miss Helen seriously, decides to call Edmund R. Donahue, which I love the name Donahue. I don't know why, but I love it. And he was the deputy chief medical examiner for Cook County, which there's another case that involves Cook County, but I can't think of what that case is off the top of my head. So if you know, please let me know, because it's been bothering me the whole time I've been researching for this case, because I know it, but I don't know where I know it from. Anyway, chief medical examiner of Cook County. He told Nick that he should pick up the bottle and he should smell the bottle, which I don't know. If someone would have told me to do that, I don't think I would have done it. I would have been like, what are you talking about, Willis? But this is because cyanide has a very distinctive smell that a lot of people say is almost almond-like, which is interesting to me. So Nick, being the good investigator he is, picks up the bottle, and he does in fact smell it. And what does it smell like? Lo and behold, almonds. So immediately they're like, cyanide. The medical examiner guy's like, cyanide, okay? So he sent the capsules to the community's chief toxicologist, whose name is Michael Schuffer, I think is how you say it. And he sent it in for testing, basically to confirm that it in fact was, you guessed it, cyanide. So our boy Michael tests the pills, and he finds out that 4 of the remaining capsules, which there was 44 left in the bottle, were in fact poisoned with cyanide. So this information gets back to the authorities, and immediately the authorities hold a press conference because they need to let the public know, hey man, don't purchase Tylenol. It could be poisoned, which is a crazy thing to say. I will give these investigators props though, because a lot of the times investigators really drag their feet, especially in older cases, I've learned. This one, they really hopped on it. And maybe that's because it was such a big scale, maybe. Or maybe the PD in Chicago just built different. Okay, I've been to Chicago. I like Chicago, actually. Reminds me a little bit of Detroit, but with like taller buildings. So it's a fun place. Anyway, our boy Michael, the toxicologist, also found out that the amount of cyanide in these pills were 3 times the lethal amount. So like they were triple lethal to people. So police definitely had to hold a press conference. And they did, in fact, hold this press conference and basically tell people not to purchase Tylenol for the foreseeable future because it could be, in fact, poisoned with cyanide. So now back to Kellerman. Remember Kellerman, our first victim? Yeah. Well, the bottle that she had taken a pill out of just so happened to be taken into inventory by paramedics when she was rushed to the hospital. Which, thank goodness. I don't know if that's like, I didn't look up if that was procedure or not. It could be. But thank goodness that they did do that because investigators noticed that the Janus bottle and the Kellerman bottle came from the same lot of bottles. If you don't know what the lot like thing is, basically it means that like they have the same lot number. It's like batch basically. So like when they produce things, it's on the bottle. If you've ever read like a bottle of meds or like honestly a bottle of anything, it'll say on there a little number like 26853. That's what lot number it is. So the manufacturer will put that on there basically to say like, hey, it came out of this lot. And they do that in case they need to recall anything. I think they do this with cars too. In case they need to recall anything because then they know like what lots came from what. So instead of recalling every single bottle of Tylenol, they can recall them from lot 4627, for example. So that's what it is. Sorry to mansplain that to you, but I figured it would be an important tidbit of information to know. So both the Kellerman bottle and the Janus bottle came from the same lot, which was lot number MC2880, in case you were wondering. After this was discovered, Johnson & Johnson, which is the parent company that produces Tylenol, went ahead and put a recall on that lot number. So basically, if you had already purchased a bottle of Tylenol from that lot number, they basically were telling you to throw it out or turn it into authorities or don't touch it, don't use it because it could be poisoned by cyanide, which is not something you want to consume. So this led to a very large multi-facility investigation because at this point, someone's out here poisoning people in their Tylenol. And this was one of the largest pharmaceutical recalls in history. I think it still is to this day, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but I am pretty positive it still remains. Because it wasn't that long ago, it was in the 80s. So I believe it is still the largest pharmaceutical recall to date. Don't quote me on that though. During this multi-facility investigation, they found tampered Tylenol bottles from other lot numbers, and that's when Johnson & Johnson decided to simply recall all Tylenol and Tylenol-related products. Because Tylenol doesn't just, release pills. They have, creams and things like that for muscles, I believe. So they recalled all Tylenol related products, which, I mean, good on them. I feel like big companies don't like to do that, but Johnson & Johnson did. And this is not me saying that I love Johnson & Johnson. This is simply me giving them credit where credit is in fact due. So there was a list of stores that were found to be holding these tampered with bottles, and these were Jewel Foods, Osco, I think is how you say it, Drugstore, Walgreens, Dominick's, and Frank's Finer Foods, which I've never heard of a Frank's Finer Foods, but you know what? I want to go. I don't know if they're still open. Somebody find that out for me though, because I want to go. Also, for anyone asking what's going on with my eyeshadow, I don't know. People are like, how do you come up with your makeup looks? I sit down and add a bunch of colors until it looks good. That's the secret, guys. The secret is there is no secret. I'm just insane. That's the secret. In an effort to calm the public, the FBI and Johnson & Johnson sent out flyers and warnings to hospitals and distributors alike, basically telling them to stop all selling and use of Tylenol, which I didn't know hospitals used Tylenol. I thought like they only used, well, I guess they could use over the counter. I don't know what I thought. I didn't think they used Tylenol though. Maybe that's just me being stupid, but I didn't think they did. But apparently they do. So the more you know. The more you know. But yeah, Johnson & Johnson basically sent out a warning to them and said, "Hey guys, stop using it. Could be cyanide in it," which sort of calmed the public's nerves slightly, but not completely. But that brings us to our police investigation, which I would say is better than a lot that I've seen. Definitely better than the Cabin 28 one that we looked at, because I don't know what was going on there. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it up here or over there. I'm one of the sides. It's flipped. I don't remember. So I will link that there and you should go check it out. After you finish this video though. Only after you finish this video. So needless to say, our investigators, they got to work. Okay, they said, "We got things to do and bills to be paid." So they learned that the tampered with capsules actually came from two different manufacturing locations, one in Pennsylvania and one in Texas, which basically suggested to investigators that these bottles had been tampered with after their manufacturing and had been sent to Chicago. So basically they thought that they had been tampered with while in Chicago instead of being tampered with right at the manufacturing source, which is a clue. We Scooby-Dooed it, we found a clue, which is good. We like that. We love a clue. We love a clue. So, after this, the police speculated that someone had taken the bottles off the shelves and tampered with them like that. So, instead of it being an inside job, they believed it was an outside job. So, instead of someone at the company tampering with them, they believed, in fact, that it was just some random person who was walking into stores with cyanide in their pocket and opening bottles and popping them in there, which maybe is that why we have safety seals now? Oh, you can see me. Oh, my bad. Is that why we have safety seals on things like that now? Because I didn't look that up, I'm sorry, but someone look that up for me and tell me, because if so, that's probably for the best. Because what do you mean they were walking into stores, popping open bottles and putting cyanide pills in there? What? Along with the original 5 bottles that were discovered by police, they discovered several more, all in the Chicago area, which further added to their theory that it was someone in the Chicago area opening up bottles and popping in cyanide pills. Which, I don't know how common it is to get your hands on cyanide, but I learned later that it's, people do it. People just have cyanide, apparently, which is really weird to me, but whatever. And then, in early 1983, at the FBI's request, which, the FBI requests it, it has to be done, I suppose. Chicago Tribune columnist Bob Greene, which I love that name, Bob Greene. That's such a good name. That's such a cartoon name, and I love that for him. He published an article with the location of the very first victim, who was Kellerman, published not only her address, but also her gravesite location. And when I first read this, I was like, what? Why? There's no good reason. But then I read further and learned that they did this because they wanted to see if the culprit would head to the gravesite. Because the fun fact about people who kill people is they are little weirdos and they love to relive the events of their killings, because to them it's like riding a roller coaster. You're getting an adrenaline rush, which I think is weird, but whatever floats your boat, I suppose. But they like to relive the event, so they will often go back to the crime scene or go to where their victim lays. So police thought that by doing this, they would catch themselves a Tylenol killer. Unfortunately, even though the gravesite and home address were under 24-hour surveillance, the killer or killers never showed themselves, which unfortunately for the police led them to yet another dead end. And also, FYI, the police and FBI did have permission from the killer's family to do this, because otherwise that would be really messed up, using your child as bait. I'd be pretty mad about that. But they did ask permission, and they didn't catch a killer, so it was sort of a moot point in the end. But that's another lead that went absolutely nowhere. You're gonna see a lot of these in this case, I'll tell you that. So once their surveillance basically led to nothing, the police decided to search other places. And by other places, I mean security footage. So they went to the store where the drugs were sold. Forgot the word there. I was like, what are those called? Drugs. They're called drugs, which I don't know if I can say on YouTube, but I said it anyway, so YouTube can be mad at me. It's not like I'm monetized anyway, so it don't matter. It really don't. But the only evidence that they could collect from these surveillance footage was a photo of, well, not a photo, but it's like a freeze frame of Paula Prince purchasing the Tylenol at a Walgreens. And behind her was a, quote, burly looking, end quote, man. And they thought that this man might in fact be the killer. Also, side note, my nails. I don't know if you can get them to focus. Yeah. Focus. They are 4th of July themed, because it was just the 4th of July. For my American viewers, if you're not American, you don't care about that, but there you go. It was the 4th of July. Sorry about it. Anyway, they released this freeze frame to the public, but it did not lead to this guy being identified. So another lead that was promising yet went nowhere, unfortunately. Another one. But this did not stop police from gaining some suspects. And our first suspect is James William Lewis. Which I like that name. It's a shame he's a weirdo. And James William Lewis was also known as Robert Richardson, which I think is very funny. I don't know. In my brain, I have to say James William Lewis, and then Robert Richardson is like very two different things. And Robert Richardson is like his fake name. I don't know. He's a weird guy. But he was accused of sending a letter to Johnson & Johnson, and this wasn't like your casual, hey man, I like your product, or hey man, I think you should change this, or can I get a coupon? This was, I want $1 million to stop the killings. Oh, you're so right. What? What are we just sending ransom letters for? 1 million? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's enough. That's enough. That's truly what that is. But yes, he was accused of sending this letter to Johnson & Johnson, basically demanding that if they wanted the killings to stop, they had to pay him $1 million. So police, finding this out, obviously bring him in for questioning. Okay, so upon arrest, Lewis, our weirdo, told authorities how the person behind the attacks did it. So he didn't say that he himself attacked these people. He said that he knew exactly how the person who did it. Which, I don't know. To me, that sounds like an admission. But, I'm not an investigator, so I suppose I'm not making the hard decisions. They didn't ask me. Mostly because I wasn't alive yet. But, anyway. Yeah, he basically told police in great detail how the perpetrator committed these crimes. And they also found that Lewis previously had a book about poisoning in his possession. This foundation's too light for me, but oh well. Also, I'm not flipping you off, I promise. It's just the finger I use. So, basically, they find this book about poisoning. It's got all different types of poisoning in it, and according to some police documents that were never officially released to the public, but I did find, his fingerprints were found on pages that were talking about cyanide poisoning, which, once again, suspicious, okay? Truly and deeply, I'm suspicious. That's weird, That's suspicious. That's weird. This foundation's really too light for me. Oh my god. But he basically admitted that he did in fact write this letter. He said, I wrote the letter. I demanded the $1 million and I still want it. And he said that it took him 3 days to write this letter, which, I don't know, to me that's just a little weird. Why? I didn't need that information. That seems like a pointless information to tell. Like, if the police come knocking on my door, knock, hey man, did you write this letter? I'd be like, yeah. And like, if I did write the letter, let's say, and I'd be like, yep, I wrote it. I don't think I'd be like, it took me 3 days to write. I'm real proud. It took me 3 days to write that letter. I don't think I'd say that. And I love sending a letter. Truly, I'm a letter fanatic. But I don't think I would say, oh, it took me 3 days. I'd be a little embarrassed if it took me 3 days to write a letter. I don't know. How long was this letter? That seems like a lot. But I guess I digress. He was proud of it, I suppose. And he said it took him 3 days, which I'm emphasizing this point because it will come up later. But Lewis did, in fact, end up going to jail because, well, he did write a ransom letter, which is, in fact, illegal. Even though he later came out and recounted the fact that he had anything to do with the poisonings. He said, I actually don't know anything. Fun fact, I actually, I don't know anything about these poisonings. Suspicious, once again. But this case did, in fact, go to trial, and Lewis spoke through his attorneys, saying, quote, Lewis was only intending to focus the attention of authorities to his wife's former employer. What? 1 + 1 does not equal 4, baby girl. I'm sorry. How did we get there? What are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense. That's the worst defense I think I've ever heard. But anyway, Lewis was in fact charged with extortion, which is fair, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Basically, the extortion was for writing the letter. That's what it was, because he was attempting to extort Johnson & Johnson for $1 million buckaroos. So he got charged with that, and he did go to prison and served his sentence. And after this, in 2007, authorities determined that the letter that had been sent to Johnson & Johnson was postmarked for October 1st, 1982. Which doesn't mean much right now, but it will in a second. Let me get there. So basically, this meant to investigators that if his timeline was true, that it took him 3 whole days. 3 days. 3. 1, 2, 3. To write this letter. With the time that it was postmarked, it would have meant that Lewis wrote this before any official reports of the poisoning came out. Okay, Lewis. What are you, you got a crystal ball back there where you're predicting things? I don't think so. Lewis, I think you know something, Lewis. Or you just lied about working on it for 3 days, which is also freaking weird, but, he clearly don't get paid for thinking. So, basically, this was real suspicious to investigators, and they confronted him. They said, Lewis, what is this about? Lewis, hey man, your timeline ain't adding up, buddy. It ain't added up. And you know what Lewis said? He said, oh, I didn't say that. Excuse me? Don't gaslight me, Lewis. I know what you said. And he completely recounted his statement. And then said that he didn't say it took him 3 days. And that was what he was sticking by. That's what he was holding firm on. So in court documents released by the Department of Justice, there was talk amongst investigators that allegedly determined and concluded that they believed Lewis was most likely responsible for the poisonings, but they didn't have enough evidence to book him, charge him, and sentence him. Which, I mean, he's a suspicious guy. He's a suspicious guy. I will give him that. He's awfully suspicious. But in 2010, both Lewis and his wife decided to give DNA samples to the authorities, and they also gave fingerprints to be tested against the ones found on the bottle. And Lewis said, quote, "If the FBI is playing it fair, I have nothing to worry about," end quote. Okay, Lewis. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be like tempting. I don't know if I'd be that cocky about it. Truly, I don't know. I don't know if I would be. I think I'd be a little more reserved, seeing as I'm being accused of murder. But I'm not a man, so maybe that's also it. I don't know. I'm also not born in the 80s, so maybe that was another thing too. But Lewis was in fact correct, because the DNA samples came back to say that they were not a match for the ones found on the bottle, and their fingerprints did not match any found at the scenes. So Lewis here, his confidence was, I guess, founded. I guess it was founded. And he continued to deny that he was responsible or involved in the poisonings at all, up until his death, which was July 9th of 2023, and he died at the age of 76 years old, taking any information of the killings and the case to the grave with him. Unfortunately. Which I don't understand. Like, I guess maybe he really didn't do it, and that's fine. That's all fine and dandy, that's great. I don't want to convict an innocent man. But what I will say is, if you did do it, or if you do know something, because it seems like he knew something, at least a little something, just tell it. Like, if you're gonna die, just tell us. I hate people who do that. Like, if I got secrets and I'm gonna die, which hopefully is not for a very long time, yeah, I would be spilling them. I'd be spilling my guts. It'd be like, one time in the first grade I stole a pencil. Like, that's what I'd be like on my deathbed. But apparently murderers just can't get behind that. They really just can't get behind that, because, I don't know, for some reason, because they're little weirdos. That's what it is. They're little weirdos, and they want people to suffer because they're miserable or whatever. I saw another person comment telling me they didn't like how I contoured my nose. Okay. I just felt the need to acknowledge that, so that they knew I acknowledged them. I deleted it. I didn't care. But anyway, police did find a second suspect, and this man's name was Roger Arnold. Which, every time I hear the name Arnold, I think of Hey Arnold. I don't know. Have you guys seen that series? I don't know if some people probably haven't, but I have, and I just think of Hey Arnold, and then that makes me think of Hey football head, and then I just think and I just giggle to myself, and that's not appropriate, but for this case, but I just think it's a little funny. Every time I was reading about him and I heard Arnold, I think it was Hey football head. I just thought I thought I needed to share that with y'all. But he is in fact not Hey Arnold, and kind of a weirdo, and also a terrible person, because he's just gross. But he was a dock worker at Jewel Osco in Melrose Park, which is, I don't know, I like the name Melrosa. I don't know why, but it reminds me of Mendoza, which I also like because of Mighty Ducks. I'm on one today. I don't know what to tell you about that. I really am just on one. But this guy was a suspect because he straight up told police that he had cyanide. Which, okay, weird. I mean, who just comes out the gate and says that? Arnold, I guess. I don't know. But he was turned in by an owner of a bar named Marty St. Clair. Which, Marty St. Clair sounds like you don't. Oh, that was a lot. It'll be fine. Sounds like he owns a bar. Marty St. Clair, I'd be like, that guy owns a bar. Okay. He's serving beer. He's serving beer and good jokes is what I would assume. But we're going to put some there. He was the owner of the bar that Arnold frequented pretty regularly, and he turned in Arnold to the police because one night he overheard Arnold saying that he killed people with white powder and had become increasingly reactive and erratic and sort of aggressive after his marriage to his wife dissolved. So Marty was just kind of like, I gotta turn this guy in, you know? He definitely seems like he knows something, which probably valid. And you know what? Good on Marty. I too would probably turn this guy in if he was like, I killed some people with some white powder. I'd be like, what? But that's the thing about people. People love to talk. And I would say talking is what catches more killers than any police investigation could. For the sole purpose of that, people can't keep their mouths shut about anything. You have an accomplishment, you want to talk about it. You have, I don't know, you did something, you want to talk about it. Truly, you want to talk about it. Everybody always wants to talk. And I feel like that is both our strength and our weakness in some cases. Because talking can be good. And then talking can also out you on things. So it's a give or take. So anyway, police book him, pick Arnold up, because he's acting weird. He's talking about white powder. It's Walter White in it. Pick him up. So they pick him up and learn that Arnold worked with victim Mary Ray's father at a warehouse, which suspicious. And that his wife was also being treated at a hospital across the street from one of the stores where the tampered Tylenol was purchased at. Which, once again, suspicious. So, basically, this guy's a little weird. He's got too many coincidences. They also found a copy of The Poor Man's James Bond, which I'm not calling him a poor man. It's like that's the title of the movie. And in this movie, which I have never seen, so don't quote me on this. This is just what I found. Whoops. This is just what I found on Google. It apparently contains instructions on making, you guessed it, potassium cyanide. Very suspicious, Arnold. Very suspicious. So, Arnold was held several times by police during the investigation, but Arnold was never officially charged with anything in relations to this case. Wasn't charged with anything related to the poisonings, the tampering, anything like that. He was not ever taken to court about any of that. He was, however, charged for something else in the summer of 1983, which, I don't know, it just confirms this guy's a little weirdo. But he actually shot and killed a passerby, mistaking him for Marty Sinclair, the bar owner. He shot and killed the man, and in January of 1984 was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder, which 30 years seems a little light, in my personal opinion, but I'm not the judge. They didn't ask me. They didn't ask me to sentence him. But even more so, Arnold only served 15 years of his 30-year sentence. Apparently we're out here just all willy-nilly with the murderers. I don't know. God forbid we keep anybody in prison. Yeah, only 15 of his 30, which is still a long part. Like 15 years is a substantial amount of time. I will admit, but not enough. Not enough for killing a man in the street. And in fact, in 1996, Arnold said, quote, "I killed a man, a perfectly innocent person. I had choices. I could have walked away. End quote. What? No words. No words. I have nothing to say about that. Because what do you mean? What do you mean? What? Who says that? Who says that? Arnold? A guy named Arnold. And he died in June of 2008, which, fun fact, was a month. Well, yeah, like a month before I was born. For a little tidbit. And it was actually just my birthday, guys. And my birthday's on the 2nd. So, crazy. That's crazy. Also, his death date just passed not that long ago. But he was later exhumed from his grave to have his DNA tested against the one on the bottle, and it was found to not be a match. But that doesn't really matter because he's still a murderer and he's still a weirdo. And you know what? I hope he hears me say that. So, whatever. And this led to the more modern investigations of this case, which wasn't much, I will admit. There wasn't much to find on that. Okay, sorry, I did my powdering off camera because it's a lot of banging and my microphone would have actually like killed me if I did that. And also I did my nose contour because that's like I have to be so focused for it that it just was not going to look good on camera. Anyway, we're back. So on May 19th, 2011, the FBI requested DNA samples from the Unabomber, which, if you want me to do a video on the Unabomber, I most definitely will. It's a case that is always, always plaguing my mind, truly and deeply. It is 24/7 on your girl's mind. I absolutely am fascinated by the Unabomber, and if you don't know who the Unabomber is, look him up. His name is Ted Kaczynski, and I know how to say his last name, okay? That's a name I'll get right. Basically, hold please. There we go. He was also a little bit of a weirdo, but I say he was a weirdo with a good cause. And I actually don't think he killed anybody. I don't think he was actually successful with anything. So, there's that. But if you want me to do a whole video on him, I most definitely will, because he is... that's a deep dive I've been down and I've done. But anyway, they requested DNA from Ted Kaczynski. What a sick name. And this was because the Unabomber's first attacks, which, if you don't know, the Unabomber was a guy who sent mail bombs. Not like mail bombs as in dude bombs. Mail bombs as in like through the postal service. And he sent these bombs to higher up officials in order to get his point across, which was that we are killing the environment and we need to take better care of the planet and take our climate crisis and just the way we treat our Earth more seriously, which holds up well in today's standard of life. And so he sent these bombs to get his point across quicker, and he wrote a manifesto, which I think is still up and available to read. And he did this on a very large scale. Well, his first attacks took place in Chicago, so that's why the FBI was like, well, maybe this guy did it because this is a large scale attack and it's on a big pharmaceutical company, because he did send it to a lot of CEOs of medical companies. And so that's why they requested his DNA, but Ted came out and denied having any involvement in the poisonings and said that he never even possessed potassium cyanide. And his DNA was tested and was found out to not be a match to the DNA that was on the tampered Tylenol bottles. And also, the thing about Ted is Ted confessed everything he did. Full well out, wrote a whole manifesto on it. So I think if he did do this, I think he definitely would have owned up for it. And this isn't me like saying that like you should send mail bombs and stuff. Don't do that. That's bad. But I do think what Ted stood for was, in fact, credible. And I think his manifesto, which I believe is still up to read, I will try to see. You should definitely look it up. You should definitely look it up because it was very interesting. Very long, very windy, but the core of it definitely still applies today. Also, don't ask me why I'm sinking throughout this video. I don't know, okay? I don't know. But Ted was soon ruled out as a suspect for the simple fact of his DNA did not match. So they continued on with their investigation. They did not find out who's done it, and it is still unsolved to this day. But there has been hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of copycats throughout the years. And by copycats, I mean people who have took inspiration from these perpetrators or this perpetrator, I don't know, and basically tried to copy their crimes with not just Tylenol but other over-the-counter pharmaceutical drugs. And sort of tried to recreate the fame and like notoriety of these crimes, which is stupid. And in the wise words of Bailey Sarian, get better idols. I love her, by the way. She's like one of my biggest inspirations, and if she ever saw a video of mine, I think I'd scream. But anyway, there was hundreds of copycats. I mean, hundreds of copycats. And they were coming out the woodwork in the 80s and 90s. Truly and deeply they were. So, where's my highlighter? Here we go. Hold please. Do 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 do. There we go. Okay, so there was 3 more deaths that occurred in 1986 due to a copycat killer. I feel weird saying killer because it's not like they're not like a typical murderer. They didn't like pick victims. It was really very random, which I also think makes it like 10 times scarier, but you know, that's just my personal opinion. And these copycats killed at least 3 people. I think there was more, but there was 3 more at least in Chicago, which is very upsetting. And if you can hear those booms in the background, those are fireworks because it's the day after 4th of July, and God forbid America doesn't use explosives for something. I don't know. But some of these copycats took place in many different states using many different pharmaceutical drugs, from gelatin packets to Tylenol to headache reliefs to all sorts of different pharmaceutical drugs, mostly over-the-counter stuff. Some of them did use like not necessarily medication, but like the saline nasal sprays. Some people would put drugs and things in those, which I think is equally as awful. But these took place in a variety of different states, not just Illinois, but they took place in states including Michigan, Washington, Texas, Kentucky, Iowa, Florida, and Louisiana. Sounds like a bad state song. And they were all, I don't think all of them had casualties, because they were all using different drugs as well, like different poisons. It wasn't all just cyanide. Some of them were mixing the medications together. Some of them were like just diluting what was in there with other over-the-counter drugs and prescription drugs. So it was just all sorts of weirdos doing weird crap, you know? And this is not good. There's always copycat murders with famous crimes because people want the notoriety of it. But this one especially, I think, is terrible. Like, don't copy these people. Get better idols. Just don't idolize them. They're weirdos who have nothing better to do. And the response to this was pretty positive on the Johnson & Johnson standpoint, because people thought that Johnson & Johnson did a remarkable job. I'm finding a lipstick story. A absolutely, positively remarkable job at taking care of this. Truly, people did. People were like, they did just friggin' great. They just did so great at responding to this. Which, I don't know, don't want to give them too much praise. Like, yes, they did good, but also kind of the bare minimum. Kind of the bare minimum. But Johnson & Johnson actually got praised in a Washington Post article that said, quote, Johnson & Johnson has efficiently demonstrated how to manage a major business's disaster, end quote. Which I think is a fair thing to say. I think Johnson & Johnson definitely did handle this well, doing the recall and taking these situations seriously. And I also think that they did a good job of keeping the public calm. And I also think they did a good job of working in tandem with the Chicago PD and the FBI alike. And I think overall they handled it pretty well, but I don't think them as a company, I mean, they're still a large company, obviously. And I think that there could be more they could have done to prevent this, especially preventing the copycat murders. Because obviously you don't know until you know. But like afterwards, I feel like they didn't put enough precautions in place for this, really. Um, but that could be just my bias, and that could be me just being like, you should have done this. I think, whatever. My opinion doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm just a goober on the internet. But I'm going to go do lips, lashes, and I will be right back to give you my final thoughts on the case. And there we go. So, my final thoughts on this case are that it's gonna be one that probably is never solved, and that's unfortunately really upsetting. And I think it's just not gonna be solved for one, how much time has passed, and two, for the fact of like it's so random. And it's not like you can, like, the victims are not picked out. Where most murders, the victim is picked out, you know? This one, they aren't. They just so happened to buy the extra strength Tylenol and take it, and that's what ended their lives. So I think that's probably the biggest point here, is that you can't do it based on, connections to the victims, because there is none. And it's like, without a DNA match or without someone seeing something and coming forward, I don't think it'll ever be solved. And that's unfortunately just the truth and the tea of it all. But I hope it's solved, and I hope that the victims' families get closure, because that is tragic and terrible, and I feel so deeply for them, because it was so random and so sudden, and they were just taking medication. It wasn't like they were doing anything reckless. Um, and I also think it's just so strange. Like, it's such a strange attack, especially, like, let's say it wasn't Lewis, even though he seems sus, but his DNA doesn't match. So let's say it's not Lewis. Let's say it's some other person. They didn't ask for any money. There was no demands. So it's just strange. It's very strange that there was no ransom or demand. There was no ultimatum. There was nothing. It was just random attacks. And that's so strange to me. That's so very strange. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and theories in the comments below. And without further ado, let's hand it back over to outro me. And that is all I have for you in today's case. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy a true crime story. And once again, if I've missed anything, or you just want to let me know your theories, please put them in the comments down below, as well as like and subscribe, because those do help out my channel. I am this close to 100 subscribers, and I'm so very excited, and I'm so very thankful for all of you for being here. And as always, if today's case was very heavy for you, go outside, touch some grass, play with your dog, hug a family member, put on some cartoons, do something that makes you happy, and have an amazing rest of your day. Be safe, be smart, be yourself. I love you. Bye-bye.